She had everything: beauty, fame, and fortune. But behind the cameras, behind the glamour, was a woman trapped in a marriage of pain, betrayal, and loss. But when life pushed her to the edge, she made a choice to fight back, to rise again, and to let God take control. Just when it seemed like the end, destiny had another plan. This is a story of pain, redemption, and a love that defied all odds. Get ready for an unforgettable journey. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss this. Oh yeah, let's go there. Adesua Adebide was the kind of woman who made headstone with her glowing dark skin, tall, graceful figure, and enchanting smile. She had won the hearts of many as one of Nollywood's most talented actresses and sought after models. Born into a Christian family in Akure, Adesua had always believed in love, respect, and the sanctity of marriage. It was on a movie set in Lagos that she met Chief Femi Olarewaju, a billionaire businessman with an empire spanning oil, real estate, and media. Femi was a man of great power and influence, known for his generosity, but also whispered about in secret for his ruthlessness. The day he set his eyes on Adesua, he was determined to make her his wife. At first, it seemed like a fairy tale. He flooded her with extravagant gifts, cars, jewelry, and luxury trips abroad. Her parents, especially her mother, were skeptical, but Adesua, blinded by love and the promise of a perfect life, saw him as her destiny. Femi is a good man, mommy. He loves me, and I believe God has destined us to be together, she had told her mother, who remained uneasy. The wedding was grand, held at one of the biggest churches in Lagos, attended by top politicians, business moguls, and celebrities. The media described it as the wedding of the decade. Adesua thought she had found her happy ending, but her joy was short-lived. The day after the wedding, Femi's true colors began to show. It started with small things, telling her to quit acting, demanding that she change her wardrobes, and insisting she cut off friends he deemed unworthy of her new status. "Why should my wife be out there for the world to see?" he said, his voice laced with control. "You belong to me alone." At first, she thought he was just being protective, but he didn't stop there. He assigned bodyguards to follow her everywhere, even inside their home. Her phone was monitored, her social media accounts deleted, and she was forbidden from visiting her family without his approval. Then came the abuse. One evening, Adesua confronted him about a newspaper report that linked him to another woman. Instead of responding, he slapped her so hard she fell to the ground. "Never question me again," he thundered, his eyes cold. She was too shocked to speak. The man she had married was nothing like the man she had loved. She found herself trapped in a golden cage. The first time she got pregnant, she was overjoyed. She thought maybe, just maybe, Femi would soften if he knew they were expecting a child. But his temper only grew worse. He returned home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. Whenever she complained, his hands did the talking. One night, he shoved her down the stairs during an argument. The baby didn't survive. The second pregnancy ended the same way, and the third and the fourth. Each time she was left broken, bleeding, and alone. She prayed, fasted, and cried to God for help. "Lord, if you can hear me, deliver me," she sobbed in the darkness of her bedroom. But the abuse continued. Then one night, something changed. She was 5 months pregnant again. her last hope of becoming a mother. That evening, Femi came home drunk and furious. He accused her of trying to steal his wealth by getting pregnant. You think I don't know your game? You are trying to tie me down with a child? He spat, advancing toward her. This time, Adesua refused to cower. She backed away, one hand on her stomach. I have loved you, Femi, but I will not let you take this child from me, she gently said. For the first time in years, she saw something in his eyes, surprise. He wasn't used to defiance. Get out of my way, he yelled, raising his hand. But before he could strike, something happened. The chandelier above them flickered, and suddenly Femi grabbed his chest. Gasping for breath, he collapsed to the floor, shaking violently. Adesua stood frozen. Her God finally answered her prayers. Help me, he gasped, eyes filled with terror. She could have called for help. She could have tried to save him, but instead she whispered, This is your doing, not mine. Then she walked away. As Femi lay gasping on the floor, clutching his chest in pain, Adesua paused at the door. A voice in her heart told her to leave him to his fate. But another voice, one she recognized as God's, whispered, Vengeance is mine. Tears filled her eyes. This man had destroyed her, taken her innocence, and killed her unborn children. Yet, she could not let him die without trying to help. She rushed to the intercom and called the driver. Take him to the hospital now, she commanded, her voice shaking. The driver and two security men lifted Femi into the car. As she watched the car drive off, she sank onto the couch, numb. For the first time in years, she felt something other than fear. She felt power. At the hospital, Femi was diagnosed with a heart condition. The doctor told him he had suffered a mild heart attack and needed to rest. But rest was lasting on his mind. Lying on the hospital bed, he replayed what had happened. Adesua had looked him in the eye and walked away. She had shown no fear. It rattled him. Over the years, he had controlled her with terror, but something had shifted. Had she finally realized her power? When he returned home a week later, Adesua was not the same woman. She no longer cowered. She no longer walked on eggshells around him. Instead, she moved with quiet strength, as if she knew something he didn't. One night, he called her into his study. Sit, he ordered. She remained standing. Femi clenched his jaw and said, So this is what it has come to? You think because I was sick, you can disrespect me? Adesua met his gaze and said, No, Femi, I have simply found my voice. I am done being afraid. For the first time in their marriage, Femi was the one who felt powerless. Days turned into weeks. Femi's business empire began to crumble. One of his top managers had embezzled millions, and before he could recover, the government launched an investigation into his affairs. His biggest business rival, Chief Adeleke, used the opportunity to sabotage his deals. One by one, Femi's assets were frozen. Then, the biggest blow came. His mistresses abandoned him. The women he had lavished money on disappeared the moment he could no longer fund their lifestyles. Adesua watched in silence as the mighty Femi Olarewaju fell. One evening, he stormed into their bedroom, his eyes red with anger. This is your fault. Ever since you changed, my life has been cursed, he said. Adesua shook her head. No, Femi, what you are facing is not my doing. It is God's justice. He lunged at her, but this time she didn't flinch. Instead, she looked him in the eye and said, Hit me one more time and you will see the wrath of God. Something in her voice made him freeze. For the first time, Femi felt fear, not of Adesua, but of the power that now surrounded her. That night, she packed her bags. Femi woke up the next morning to an empty bed. Adesua was gone. He stormed downstairs. "Where is she?" He barked at the maids. She left, sir," one of them stammered. He grabbed his phone and called her, but it went straight to voicemail. He sent messages begging, threatening, cursing, but she did not respond. Adesua had done what he never thought possible. She had escaped. Adesua returned to her family in Akure, where she was welcomed with open arms. She took time to heal, physically and emotionally. With her mother's encouragement, she returned to acting. Her first movie after her return was a blockbuster, and she was nominated for multiple awards. One evening, she sat in her garden watching the sunset when her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. She answered. Adesua, the voice was weak, almost unrecognizable. Her heart stopped. It was Femi. "What do you want?" she asked calmly. Silence, then a broken whisper. "I lost everything. I have nothing left," he said. Adesua closed her eyes. She had prayed for this moment, not for his downfall, but for his repentance. "Are you ready to surrender to God?" she asked. Femi broke down in tears. "I don't know how." She sighed and said, "Then let me tell you about the God who saved me." For the first time in his life, Femi Olarewaju was a broken man. Sitting in a dingy one-room apartment in a rundown part of Lagos, he stared at the empty plate before him. The billionaire who once threw lavish parties and owned luxury cars was now struggling to afford a meal. His companies had collapsed under the weight of fraud investigations. His so-called friends had abandoned him. Even his mistresses, women who once clung to him for his wealth, refused to answer his calls. His health has worsened. The doctors warned that if he didn't control his stress, his heart wouldn't last long. But the worst part, he was alone, completely alone. And that was when he thought of Adesua. After his call with Adesua, Femi found himself restless. He had mocked her faith in God for years, but now he was desperate. The next morning, he found his way to a small church in the neighborhood. It was nothing like the grand cathedrals he once attended for show. This was different, humble, yet peaceful. An elderly pastor, Baba Adeboya, welcomed him. "What brings you here, son?" he said. Femi swallowed hard. "I don't know. I need help," he said. The pastor studied him for a moment before nodding. "Come, let's talk." For the first time in his life, Femi opened up. He confessed everything: his pride, his greed, his womanizing, his abuse of Adesua. He spoke of his downfall, his loneliness, and his fear of dying without redemption. Tears ran down his face. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he whispered. Baba Adeboya placed a hand on his shoulder. "No one does, my son, but that is the power of God's grace." That day, Femi fell to his knees and surrendered his life to Christ. Redemption did not come easy. Femi struggled daily with guilt. The memories of the things he had done haunted him. He tried to reach out to people he had wronged, former business partners, friends, and employees, but they all turned him away. Even Adesua was skeptical. "You say you've changed, but how do I know this isn't just another trick?" she asked. Femi sighed and said, "You don't. All I can do is prove it." So he did. He got a small job at a warehouse, earning just enough to survive. The man who once owned mansions now swept floors, but he didn't complain. He joined the church's outreach team, helping the poor. Slowly, people began to see the change, but Adesua still kept her distance. Months passed. Femi's health improved and his faith grew stronger. One day, he received a letter from his lawyer. The government had completed its investigation. Though his businesses had collapsed, he was not going to jail. Instead, he was given an opportunity, a chance to rebuild. This time, the right way. He had a choice: return to his old ways or continue his path of righteousness. He went to Adesua. "I won't ask you to take me back," he said. "I just want to say I am truly sorry, and whether you believe me or not, I will spend the rest of my life making things right," he said. Adesua studied him for a long time. Then, for the first time in years, she saw something new in his eyes: humility. She smiled softly and said, "Femi, true repentance is not about words, it's about action. Keep walking this path, and in time, the world will see the man God has made you. Okay?" Femi nodded. "I will." And for the first time in his life, he meant it. Months passed. Femi remained steadfast in his new life. He worked hard, stayed humble, and surrounded himself with godly people. He was no longer the arrogant billionaire who once controlled people with his wealth. He was now a man who sought to serve others. Adesua, on the other hand, had grown in her faith and success. She was now one of the most sought-after actresses in Nigeria, and her influence had extended beyond entertainment. She had become an advocate for abused women. Though she kept her distance, she followed Femi's progress from afar. One evening, she received a call from Baba Adeboya, the pastor who had been guiding Femi. "My daughter," the old man said, "I know you still carry wounds from the past, but I have seen true repentance in Femi. The Lord has done a mighty work in his life," he told her. Adesua sighed. "I know, Baba, but after everything I went through, how do I know he won't hurt me again?" she said. "There is no fear in love, my child, but reconciliation is not about rushing back. It is about seeking God's will. Ask him and he will guide you," he told her. That night, Adesua prayed like never before, and for the first time, she felt peace. One Sunday morning, Adesua walked into the small church where Femi worshipped. As she entered, heads turned. She was famous now. Her presence was impossible to ignore. Femi, who was leading the church's ushering team, turned and froze when he saw her. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, Adesua walked toward him and said, "Can we talk?" Femi swallowed hard and said, "Of course." They sat outside the church under a tree. "I've been watching you, Femi," she said. "I see the change, and I see that it is real." Femi's heart pounded. He had longed for this moment, but he had also accepted that he might never get it. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said softly, "but I pray for it every day." Adesua took a deep breath and said, "I forgave you a long time ago, not for your sake, but for mine. But forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation, you know?" Femi nodded, his chest tightening. "But," she continued, "I also know that God is a God of restoration. And if he truly has changed you, then maybe, just maybe, he is giving us a second chance." Tears welled up Femi's eyes, and he said, "I will never hurt you again, Adesua. I promise." "I don't need promises, Femi. I need proof," she told him. And so they began again, not as husband and wife, but as friends. Their journey was slow and careful. Femi courted Adesua with patience and respect. They prayed together, studied the Bible together, and built a new foundation based on faith, not fear. One evening, during a charity gala, Femi stood before the crowd and publicly acknowledged his past. And he said, I was once a man who abused his wife, cheated, and used my power to control others. But today, I stand before you as a testimony of what God can do when a man surrenders. If he can change me, he can change anyone, he said. The hall fell silent. Then applause erupted. Adesua wiped tears from her eyes. She saw the man God had transformed, and in that moment she knew. 1 year after, Femi stood at the altar of the same small church where he had found salvation. Dressed in a simple but elegant white gown, Adesua walked down the aisle, her heart full of peace. This was not the same marriage as before. This was new. This was different. As they exchanged vows, there was no fear, only love, only faith, only God. And this time, the tables had truly turned. God had taken what was broken and made it whole again. 1 year into their renewed marriage, Adesua and Femi received the news they had once feared would never come. She was pregnant. This time, there was no fear, no stress, no abuse. Femi was no longer the controlling man he once was. He prayed over her every morning, accompanied her to every hospital visit, and ensured she felt nothing but love and peace. When the time came, after hours of labor, Adesua gave birth to not one but two beautiful babies, a boy and a girl. Tears streamed down Femi's face as he held his newborn son and daughter in his arms. He looked at his wife, the woman he had once hurt, but whom God had restored to him. We will raise them in love, Adesua, he whispered. I will never fail them or you. And as they held their babies, they knew that their story was not just one of pain, but of redemption. God had taken what was broken and made it whole again. This is where our story ends. But my advice to anyone under abusive marriage, whether you are a woman or a man, please, I beg of you to separate yourself from that house. Once is physical abuse, your life is threatened. You can go and stay with your friends or your parents or even somewhere else that is okay by you. Stay there until things are resolved. No matter how long it takes, please stay away until everything are resolved. I am not saying that you should divorce. No, that's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that you should separate yourself to be alive, because so many has died under abusive marriage. Don't die while protecting your marriage or what people may say. Marriage is for the living, not for the dead. Think about it. This concludes our story. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe, like, comment and share, and also touch the bell button so that you will be notified each time we put out new video. Subscribe for more stories with powerful life lessons. Please and please subscribe to help us grow our channel. And please, don't forget to leave your comments, your question, or even your suggestions under the comment section, and we will come back to deal with it. God bless you all as you do so. Bye-bye. Love you. Mwah.